Hello, mathematicians. Today we're going to be solving one-step equations using the inverse multiplicative property. So the inverse multiplicative property tells us that if we take a number, for example 4, and multiply it by its reciprocal, which is 1/4, we would get 1. So 4 times 1/4 is 4 over 4, which equals 1. And that would cancel the 4 out, since our goal is to isolate x and just have 1x by itself. So if we multiply 1 by 1/4, that's the same thing as dividing by 4. So in this case, where I have 4 times x is equal to -60, I could simply divide by 4. And we know that 4 divided by 4 is equal to 1. And I don't have to write 1x out because 1x and x are the same thing. And whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. So -60 divided by 4 is equal to -15. And just like our previous problems, if we want to go back and check our work, all we have to do is go back and substitute for x. So 4 times -15 is equal to -60, which makes this equation true. So x in this case is equal to -15. So here I have -3x is equal to -36. We're going to do the same thing since this is -3 times x. If we multiplied by -1/3 or divided by -3, but in both cases it's the same thing and we would cancel out x. So I'm going to divide both sides by -3. -3 divided by -3 is 1. 1x is the same thing as just x. So x equals -36 divided by -3, and negative divided by a negative is a positive. So we end up with +12. And if we want to go back and check our work, all we have to do is substitute for x. So -3 times 12 is equal to -36. So x is equal to 12 because this is true. So here I have a half x is equal to 8. And remember that the inverse multiplicative property tells us in order to isolate our x and get 1, we'll have to multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 1 over 2 is 2 over 1. So if I multiply both sides by 2 over 1, we'll cancel out the half. So 2 over 1 times half is equal to 1. So this cancels out. And I can multiply the other side by 2 over 1, or just 2, because 2 and 2 over 1 are the same thing. So I end up with x equals 8 times 2 is 16. So x is equal to 16. And if I want to go back and check my work, all I have to do is a half times 16. So half of 16 is equal to 8. So that's how I know this is true. And if I wanted to solve this out, all I would have to do is write 16 over 1. 1 times 16 is 16. 2 times 1 is 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8. And that's how we know our equation is true. And lastly, here we have 2/3 times x is equal to -8. So if we want to get x by itself, remember that we're going to multiply by the inverse. The reciprocal. And the reciprocal of 2/3 is 3 over 2. So if I multiply by 3 over 2, 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 over 6 cancels out to 1. So 1x. And then we're going to have to do the same thing on the right side. So since I multiplied the left side by 3 over 2, I have to multiply -8 by 3 over 2. So -8 times 3 is -24. And if I want to make it easier, I'll write it as -8 over 1. 1 times 2 is 2. -24 divided by 2 is -12. So here, x is equal to -12. And if I want to go back and check my work, I have to substitute. So 2/3 times negative 12. And if I want to make it easier, I could rewrite this over 1. So 2 times negative 12 is negative 24. Over 3 times 1 is 3. Negative 24 divided by 3 is negative 8. And that's how I know that x is equal to negative 12, because negative 24 over 3 is equal to negative 8, making this equation true.